2025 has witnessed a series of relentless flash floods across the United States, from Texas and Kentucky to New York City. With river levels rising higher than ever and storms striking more frequently, is this year breaking all records? On July 23rd, Texas state lawmakers convened a special session to address the issues surrounding the flash floods that struck the Texas Hill Country in July, claiming at least 137 lives. State Senator Lois Kolkhorst, a member of the Joint Senate-House Committee investigating flood preparedness and response, stated that the committee is approaching its task comprehensively.
I have a family in particular in Senate District 18 whose child was missing for 10 to 12 days, and we have recovered her and going through that stage, and so one of the saddest times. And so we pray for all those families, and we're going to continue to pray for them and for them to find peace and to help these areas, these regions of Texas to rebuild. But again, loss of life is going to, you can never replace that. So we continue to pray and pray for their comfort and peace. What went right, what went wrong, and I think that moreover, and you hear it, is were the warning systems in place? Were they heeded when they were looking at this anomaly of this tropical storm, how it could interact with a low pressure cell, and the timelines are very important to me. And so I think we're going to have to look at how we coordinate that better and really saying this is a serious warning, you must get out, seek higher ground.
This hearing isn't about pointing fingers. I think it's more about, what our response is, what we have to do in the future, and how to address the issues that have come up, and be a little more, a whole lot more proactive instead of reactive, right? Make sure that we have the right policies in place to make those decisions and determinations, and see what else we can do to further that and further the progress. This is definitely something that nobody wanted to happen. Nobody thought something like this could occur, and it's our job and our duty to make sure our response is much better and we're much more prepared.
We want to make it so that no lives are lost and damage is mitigated as best as possible. So that's the purpose of this select committee, is to find ways to improve and make that a better situation should this ever happen. And obviously we pray for not only those victims that went through all this, but also that we don't have another scenario like this very soon. But when we do, we want to be as prepared as possible.
Help you get to that finish line, because I think that's the goal of everybody, and it's not going to happen in 30 days.
Statute or by administrative rule to updated cycle for that?
Yes, sir. Great technical question. So the current standard preparedness guideline, CPG 101, which is the national standard.
Also, volunteer coordination was a big deal. Texans will help Texans, and if we can find a way to harness that energy and that commitment from our own to help in disaster times, and we are able to organize and coordinate them a lot better, I think that's an incredible resource we can use where we're not just growing government, we're utilizing people's goodwill to help in areas in responding to help our own, and I think that's a big thing that I want to look at specifically.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott included the investigation in the agenda of a special legislative session that began on July 21st. On social media, Abbott announced that the death toll from the July 4th flash floods had risen to 137 lives, with 2 people still missing. Previously, the governor had stated that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, needs reform to operate more effectively, and the state is working with the agency and the White House to streamline the aid process. President Donald Trump had proposed abolishing FEMA, arguing that the agency mishandled past disasters and that federal aid should be directly allocated to the states.
So one thing I think most state governors, most state officials, as well as the federal government could agree upon, and that is we needed improvements in FEMA. And it needed to be what I call right-sized so that it would be more nimble, quicker in the response. but also understanding that it's the locals who know what is best in responding to a disaster. And local is defined by these local communities, whether it be Leander or Travis County or Williamson County, whatever the case may be. They're the ones on the ground, and they know their communities far better than anybody else, and they know how to respond to their communities. And it's the state and federal government that work to provide them the additional resources they need to accomplish their goal. But by working on the reforms that we will work with FEMA and with the presidential team on, we're going to work to find ways to streamline the process, cut through all the red tape, to ensure that even when we do that, the monetary resources that we are receiving now that are much needed for things like having the emergency first responders or debris removal or search and rescue operations, those will still be funded, but we will have the ability to do it a whole lot faster, a whole lot quicker without waiting around for the federal government. Last question. Job number one is always saving lives, protecting lives, and finding those who have lost their lives. And that is a 24/7 operation that we are unrelenting in continuing to pursue. The stories about those who have been swept away is gut-wrenching and heartbreaking, and the kind of thing that spurs us to do even more to make sure that we're going to be searching and finding everybody that we can. All of America has their eyes on what's going on in Texas, and Americans are praying, caring for, and helping our state so much. It's just unbelievable. You can see one thing that's quite obvious, and that is, it doesn't matter if they're a red state or a blue state. They're fellow Americans, and when times get tough, Americans come together. That is even more true as it concerns Texans. This has been an extraordinarily challenging time, if not the most extraordinarily challenging time that Texans have faced. And in typical Texas fashion, Texans have united, come together.
This flood has been classified as one of the deadliest flooding events in the U.S. in decades, raising questions about the lack of flash flood warning sirens in Kerr County, the hardest hit area. Many have expressed concerns about vacant positions at National Weather Service offices due to staffing cuts under President Donald Trump. The Legislative Committee investigating the floods will hold its next meeting on July 31st in Kerr County. The committee will draft a report to submit to the full Texas Senate and House to inform potential legislation during the month-long special session. Earlier, Reuters reported that a woman was clinging to a tree amidst rising floodwaters near 101st Terrace north of Indian Creek and the Indian Creek Trail. Fortunately, Kansas City firefighters rescued her and brought her safely to shore. At the time, the National Weather Service in Pleasant Hill had issued a flash flood warning for multiple counties in the Kansas City metropolitan area. Water levels at Indian Creek and nearby streams were reported near flood stage, with the risk of widespread flooding in several areas. Climate scientists say it is no coincidence that this summer, the U.S. has experienced some of the largest floods in 100 to 1,000 years, occurring almost simultaneously across multiple states over several days. Much of the U.S. has endured an unusually wet summer with record levels of atmospheric moisture. When cold air masses and other weather systems move in, this moisture can be wrung out, compressed like a water-soaked sponge, producing heavy rainfall often concentrated in specific areas. Throughout much of the summer, atmospheric conditions across the U.S. have drawn moist air from the Gulf of Mexico and the unusually warm western Atlantic, including the Gulf Stream, northward, according to UCLA climate researcher Daniel Swain. This has led to record levels of what meteorologists call precipitable water, the amount of rainfall that could be produced if all the water in the atmosphere were immediately extracted. Some of these floods result from rainfall with a recurrence interval of about 1,000 years, meaning there is only a 0.1% chance of occurrence in any given year. However, climate change is making these events more extreme. A recent study by climate scientist Michael Mann from the University of Pennsylvania shows that such weather patterns have tripled in frequency since the mid-20th century during the summer months. The issue is that these weather patterns are not necessarily fully captured by climate models, he said. This adds uncertainty to future predictions about trends in extreme weather. Amid climate change increasing the frequency and intensity of floods, these efforts are not only urgent for Texas, but also serve as a lesson for the entire United States, as communities nationwide face similar challenges. With a spirit of unity and determination, Texas and other flood-affected regions are working toward building a more resilient future, where every citizen is protected against increasingly severe storms.